Hi there, welcome to the video. My name is Rania. I'm the support specialist for MKN Group. In this video, we'll be focusing on how to set up your FusionPBX fax server to be able to directly send faxes from the web GUI. Before we get started, a little bit about us. We are VoIP service providers and we have been in business for 11 years and counting. We have a multitude of different plans. Our SIP truck plans range from $15 every month to $45 every month. In addition to that, we have our cloud-based hosted solution, which is $15 every month per extension, and we also have special prices for VoIP resellers. If you would like any additional information, please don't hesitate to visit www.isvoiptime.com, or you may call our main number. If you're a Canadian customer, please call 416-639-1599, and if you are a U.S. customer, please call 716-778-3888. Alrighty, without further ado, let's get right into this. So, when we get started, the first fundamental thing that we have to have is a fax server. Now, if you have already created a fax server, did the incoming routing, created your SMTP information, then you may skip this part. I want to start off from the fundamentals, just in case anybody watching has not created a fax server. So I may, lead you through the whole entire process up until we get to the point where we actually start sending faxes from the web GUI itself. So, to be able to create a fax server, click on Applications, click on Fax Server, and you'll be met with this specific interface. Please click on Add, and we'll start filling this information in. Let's first start off by naming our fax server. Because we don't have a fax server, let's call this one just simply Fax Server. Then we must give it an extension. Generally, fax server extensions range from 7,000 and up, but please make sure that whatever extension you input within the fax server, it's not duplicated anywhere else, whether it may be just a general extension, a ring group, an IVR, a call center. Just please make sure that it is not similar to any other extension and it is basically its own unique digits. Upon filling in the two first options, you may skip to the email aspect. The email address that you will put in here is the email address that will be receiving the faxes. So you have to remember that FusionPBX's fax server is the type of service where it's fax to email. So, a fax comes in, it reaches the fax server, it is then forwarded to this designated email that will receive the faxes in PDF format. So the email that you put in here will be the email that will be receiving the faxes. I will just simply choose something as simplistic as abc@hotmail.com. This could be a pre-existing email, I honestly wouldn't know, but this is just for example purposes. So upon filling in the specific information, you are done, so you may click Save. Now you'll see that your fax server has been created. Your next step would be to make sure that incoming routing reaches this fax server. So please click on Dial Plan, click on Destinations, and then click on the destination in which has your fax server number. So for instance, I'm using a 437 number. This is just a test number that I use for testing purposes. So this will be my fax number as this example. And then basically, you have to make sure that you have actions and fax detection filled in. So under the Actions tab, you simply click the drop-down menu, and then you find the fax server itself, which is the 7,000 fax server we just created. And then under the fax detection, you basically do the same thing. You just find the fax server that you created, and you link it with the fax number. Under the usage, please make sure that if it relates to fax, that you have the fax checkbox checked off. Upon finishing the following, please click Save. And now we'll go back to the fax server. So now we have the fax server created, we have the incoming routing created appropriately, and now we must fill in the SMTP information. Now, fax servers have two aspects to it. The first aspect, as I just informed you, would be the email that will be receiving the faxes. The second aspect is the email that will be sending the faxes. So basically, an, a fax comes in, it reaches the fax server, it then goes to the SMTP information. The SMTP information has the email address that is basically forwarding all faxes to the receiving email, which is basically, for this example, abc@hotmail.com. So, to be able to fill in your SMTP information, you click on Advanced, you click on Default Settings. In the search bar on the side, you put in SMTP, but please make sure that it is in lowercase format, and then you'll be met with this specific interface. If you only have one domain or one domain within the server, you may just automatically start filling in the information. But let's say you have a multitude of different subdomains. You have to make sure to correlate this information with that specific subdomain. I'll show you how you're able to do that. So under the email category, beside the subcategory, click on the checkbox that will then check all of the other aspects. If you would like to copy this information to the designated subdomain, you simply click on copy. From the domain aspect, you pick the domain in which you have chosen, or you need to choose to be able to copy this information into, and then you click on paste, and then you click on OK. That will automatically paste this information into that subdomain. Then you click on Advanced, you click on Domains, you pick the domain in which you are trying to access, you click on Settings, and then you're able to see this information there. But I won't be doing that. I will just simply be helping you fill in this information right now. So, how do you get the SMTP information? This can be found just by doing a simple Google search. Let's say, for instance, the forwarding email will be an email address that correlates to, let's say, Outlook. You just simply go on Google, you type in Outlook SMTP information, just as I did, and this was the first thing that I received. This is actually for Gmail, sorry about that. So for Outlook, this would be the interface that I received. Then you just simply copy this information, SMTP. The SMTP server would be smtp-mail.outlook.com. The SMTP port is 487. The SMTP encryption method is TLS. And if you were to do, let's say for Gmail, basically the same thing. Just go on Google, just put Gmail SMTP information. You'll be met with this. And then basically the server name is smtp.gmail.com. It uses TLS as its encryption method. It uses port 587. So you will see why this information is important. Let's go back to our FusionPBX server, and I'll slowly begin to help you fill in the following information. Okay, so we will be skipping the first two lines, the method and SMTP authentication, because it's already filled in under the value category. The next thing that it comes up is the SMTP from. Right here is where you input the SMTP email address that will be forwarding all faxes to the receiving email. So just simply put in the email address beside the SMTP underscore from line. The SMTP underscore from underscore name is basically what you will be giving this SMTP setting. So let's say I'm doing this for MKN Fax. I will just simply put MKN Group Fax, and that will be the title of any email that is forwarded. Then we have the SMTP underscore host. This is the host name of the email server that you will be using. So for instance, let's say that I'm using a Gmail account. You just go back to the information that we were looking on, and we look at the SMTP, and we see that the host name is smtp.gmail.com. Let's say we're using Outlook. We go here, we find the SMTP information, and you see SMTP server name is smtp-mail.outlook.com. So let's go back, and that's what you fill in when it comes to the SMTP host. SMTP host name is basically an exact duplicate of the SMTP host. Or you may just put, let's say you're using Outlook, SMTP host name would just be Outlook. Or if you're using Gmail, it could be Gmail. But usually what I like to do, I just like to duplicate this aspect right here because, it's not that of an importance to have a specific host name. The SMTP password is the password of the email address that you will be using to forward faxes to the receiving email. So it's basically the password of the email address that you put within the SMTP underscore from line. Now we're looking at the SMTP port. Again, this can be found within this information. So for the Gmail, the port number is 587. And I believe for Outlook, the port number is also 587. And then we go back here. Secure is TLS. That's already been filled in. And then the SMTP username is basically just the email address that you've put in the SMTP underscore from. Now, after putting all of the following information, please make sure that within enabled, everything is enabled to true. As you can see by default, the method, the host, and the port are disabled. Please make sure that these are enabled. Then you just go on status, you go on zip status, you reload the XML, the ACL, flush the cache, then you log out, log back in, and then you may do the next step. So it's always very important to test if your SMTP information is put in accordingly. To be able to do that, if you click on status, you'll see that there's an email logs aspect here. Now, this email logs aspect, it gives you the ability to test whether your SMTP information is put in correctly or not. If you click on the test tab, you may fill in an email address, an accessible email address, and what's going to happen is basically the test will be working accordingly. If it failed, then you will get an email to this email address stating to you that it failed, why it failed, so on and so forth. So I'm just going to say abc@hotmail.com, and then I'm going to click on send. You're going to see that this dialog box is going to come up and is going to give you the ability to see your connection, your results. This part will be blurred for sensitive information, but basically what you have to focus on is under the connections category, it will give you an indication all the way at the end why it failed, and it may even give you a link that you can access that will give you additional information to help you set things accordingly. As you can see, the results for this SMTP test is successful. Okay, so now let's close the tab. Now we know, or basically now what we've done is we've set a fax server. We've made sure that the fax server's incoming routing is set accordingly. We've done the SMTP information, so now any receiving faxes will work accordingly. They will go to the receiving email and they'll be forwarded using the forwarding email that we just implemented in the SMTP information. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to focus on sending emails from the web GUI. If you were to just press on new, type in the information to be able to send the email and then click send, it will not work because you need to make sure to have IMAP information set accordingly. Now before we actually get to that, I want to make sure to tackle on two things. Let's say you are not able to get your SMTP information or SMTP settings to work accordingly. There are two reasons for that. Actually, there are a multitude of different reasons for that, which is why the testing aspect is very essential. But two things that almost always come up are allow less secure apps and two-step verification. This is, and I'm speaking about this in regards to the email that will be forwarding the faxes. You have to make sure that allow less secure apps on your designated email is enabled. So to be able to do that, let's say for instance we are using Gmail. To be able to do what we need to do, you just basically go on your Gmail account, you maneuver to the settings aspect, and if you scroll all the way down, you're going to see a less secure app access setting. Right now for this Gmail account, this has been turned off. But if you are using this specific Gmail account to send faxes or to forward faxes to the designated receiving email, you have to make sure that it is enabled. In addition to that, you have to make sure that two-step verification is disabled. So for us, the two-step verification has been disabled, and you may find this again under the Security tab. And this goes the same for Outlook. The only difference is for the Outlook account, I actually did not need to enable Allow Less Secure Apps. I believe it's enabled by default, but I did have to make sure that the two-step verification was disabled. And again, for both Gmail and Outlook, you can find this information in the security aspect of your email. So now that we've gone through that, let's go back to be able to configure our fax server to be able to send faxes. Now, I mentioned earlier that it's very, very essential to make sure that you know your IMAP information. Knowing your IMAP information will then be able to help you get things up and rolling. How do you get your IMAP information? It is as simple as going on Google, just typing in, Outlook IMAP information, Gmail IMAP information. So this one right here is for Outlook, and as you can see right away, the IMAP server name is outlook.office365.com, the port is 993, and the encryption method is TLS. And if you were to do this for Gmail, you will have the same type of response. If you go on Google, you just type in Gmail IMAP information, click on the first link that comes up. As you can see, it's imap.gmail.com. The required SSL is yes, and the port is 993. So when we have the IMAP information, then we can go on to the next step. Please click on the fax server that you've just created, and what we will be focusing on is the advanced section. Once you click on this, you will see that the dashboard will basically expand and you will be met with this aspect. So this right here is what we will focus on, the account connection. So this will be in relation to the designated email address that we will use to enable remote inbox. Okay? So once you have that email address, make sure to get the IMAP information, and we'll start typing in the information that could be implemented to work accordingly to be able to send faxes. So I have personally filled in this information. Some of this will be blurred out because it is sensitive information, but just to kind of go go one by one, the type would be IMAP. The server would be the server of the email address that you will be using to basically enable remote inbox. The port number will be put in right here. So for Outlook is 993. The security encryption method is TLS. Right here, validate certificate. I believe by default it's enabled, so please leave it as enabled. Do not put this as false. The username is basically the email address of the email that you'll be using to enable remote inbox, and the password will be the password of that email address. In the mailbox folder, you just simply need to type in inbox. Upon doing the following, you may click save, and then you may test it out. So we've clicked save, the update has been completed, and now what we're going to do is we're actually going to send a test fax. Now before we actually send out a test fax, we must make sure that we have a outbound caller ID name and number implemented. To be able to do that, please click on Fax Server, and then under the caller ID name and caller ID number, just please make sure to have the text boxes filled in. So, the caller ID name is MKN Group Fax, the caller ID number is our Canadian number, and then after I fill this in, I simply click save. Now that you've done this aspect, now we can actually test outgoing faxes. To be able to do that, please click on the Fax Server GUI, and then under Tools, you will see a New tab. Click on New, and you will be met with this interface. Now, as you can see, a lot of these settings are pretty optional, but let's say, for instance, you want to fill in some of them. You can, but how will you be able to preview it? Let's say you want to fill in this information, but you want to make sure to know what you're sending before you're sending it. Now, for this example, I'm going to show you a basic preview. I'm not going to be adding any fax numbers or fax files or anything like that, just for this specific example. So let's say, for instance, I want to fill in the subject and the message. The subject I wanted to be testing, the message I wanted to say, call our main number, and then I'll put our Canadian number. And, let's say you've attached a PDF file and you say, okay, well, I want to see how it looks like. You just simply click on preview. Once you click on preview, it will actually download a PDF version of this preview, and then you click on open file and you are met with this interface where you're able to see how the cover sheet looks like. Now, this cover sheet is very plain. You see you have the FusionPBX logo. This can actually be changed, but I will not get into that within this specific video because we're trying to focus on, sending out the faxes accordingly. This may be a video I may want to do sometime in the future, but for now, we're just going to stick to what we have. So this is the preview of it. If you look down, you see that you have the footer here, and then the second aspect of this would be the PDF file or the TIF file that you've attached. So now that we know how to preview it, let's actually go in and start filling in this information. So again, a lot of this stuff is optional. You don't necessarily need to put in a header or anything like that, a to or anything like that. The two major important things are the fax number and the fax files. The fax number cannot just be a fax number by itself. There's a specific format you have to use to be able to kind of send faxes accordingly. And that format is basically bracket out bracket colon fax number. I will have this actually in the description box below, so you'll be able to if for instance you can't see it very well, you'll be just able to kind of copy and paste it. I will also have this specific fax number. This is a fax number that is accessible by anyone on the internet, and this is a service in which you can fax them and they'll actually fax you back to let you know if everything was done successfully. Now, we want to make sure to choose the PDF, right? Because if we're sending out a fax, the PDF file or the TIF file will actually have whatever we need within it, whether it may be a prescription or anything else relating to fax. So to be able to do that, just simply click on choose file and then choose the file. The one that I'm choosing is basically this is a test.pdf, and it will simply just say this is a test. Again, you may preview this. It will actually have the PDF attached to it, so it'll showcase to you how the PDF looks like. But I won't be doing that. I have all the information implemented, and now I will just simply send. The first thing that you have to look at is a message that you'll get up here. It will either say OK, and then some, like there you go, just some other digits there and alphabets, or it may say something else. So because it says OK, that means that is actually a really, really good sign. The next thing that you have to always remember is that with faxes, sometimes it may take some time for it to push through. So be patient. Don't get anxious if you don't see it pushing through, if you don't see it on your log file or on your sent file. Just give it a little bit of time. So now that we've sent it, we want to go back to our fax server and we want to actually look at the log file. That is the first thing I want to look at, and the log file is actually your best friend. It will give you an indication of all of your logs, and it will give you a further indication on the results of it. Did it send? If it didn't send, why didn't it send? So let's click on our log file, and we will see that we actually have a result of the call dropped prematurely. Now initially, I would be like, there's a code 49, I didn't get a result of it being successful, I don't know what's going on. But because I know with faxes and fax servers in general, it takes some time, I'm going to let it be. I may refresh every once in a while to see if anything else will come up, but currently nothing else has came up. So let's go back to the fax server and give it a little bit of time. So I will pause this video, and right now it's currently 3:13, so I will announce the time in which I start up the video again, just to kind of showcase to you how long it took for the fax to actually send. Alright, so it has been actually a couple of minutes since I've actually looked at the log file. I did get caught up with a couple of stuff that I needed to do. So now I'm back and I'm ready to see if the fax was successful. So to be able to do that, let's click on the log file, and perfect. The fax was successful. It was sent on May 2nd, 2022 at 15:13, which seems to be almost immediately after I stopped recording the video. So it was sent pretty quickly. Success is 1, code 0, and the result was okay. Then we have 0 bad rows. This is the transfer rate, and also tells you how many times it retried to send this fax. So it tried the first time, the call was dropped prematurely, and then it tried another time, which then was successful. So now let's go back to the fax server and actually take a look at the fax itself. So let's click on the sent tab, and we'll see that this is what we just sent. The caller ID name is MKN Group Fax. This is the caller ID number for 166391599. The destination number is the number of the receiving fax, and of course we have the privilege of being able to view the PDF file after we've sent it. So if we click on it, it'll download the PDF file for us, and then we just simply click Open File, and we'll see the basic cover sheet that we've already established. And then if you scroll down, this is the PDF that I attached. It just simply says this is a test. So that is pretty much it in regards to getting the FusionPBX server up and running to be able to create, incoming routing so faxes are received to that fax server. We've implemented the SMTP information for the forwarding fax. We've implemented the the outbound caller ID name and number. We've made sure to tackle on the allow less secure apps, make sure that's enabled. Two-step verification, make sure that's disabled for the forwarding email. And we've implemented our IMAP information for the designated email address that will be used as the remote inbox. And we've sent out a successful fax. So I really hope this video has helped you achieve your objective. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below, and I'll try my absolute best to get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And please, if you don't mind, give this video a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We make consistent content in regards to help individuals with their VoIP needs and questions. And again, if you would like any more information on the services that we offer, if you're a Canadian customer, please call 416-639-1599. And if you are a U.S. customer, please call 716-778-3888. This has been Rania from MKN Group, and I hope that you have yourself a wonderful day.